Let's talk a little bit about, we talked about shared security, right? That's, I think, an important function of many blockchains today, where you use the underlying token to actually secure the blockchain itself and then the transactions. In Polkadot's case, it's a little bit broad because you're talking about all the parachains. But let's talk about the governance element to it, because upgradability and reaching quorum and actually making iterative improvements on these underlying technologies is not trivial at all. Ethereum is going through a multi-year scaling and kind of iterative approach to get from ETH1 to ETH2. Because I'm not, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, but because some of these ecosystems are so nascent, when they have their first scaling challenges and the blockchain breaks, like we saw last week, you actually have to hit quorum to restart and make sure that things come back online. And all of those are inherently political governance decisions, even if everybody's relatively well aligned. So how would you explain the novelty of some of the governance solutions that are now in the new version of Polkadot, and how these pieces fit together, that you can have a little bit more of a seamless upgrade process and not necessarily be politicized around every single decision and design decision for the blockchain itself?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I think a lot of design decisions are just necessarily going to be politicized, right? Because there will be winners, there will be losers. You take Ethereum's ProgPow conversation, and it's clear that some of the miners aren't especially happy. They've made some investments, and this could compromise that. So inevitably there will be discussions. There will be different sides of the argument. The real need isn't to remove those discussions. It's right and proper that those discussions happen. The real need is to ensure that there is a way of forming a consensus between people on different sides of the table. So there needs to be a decision framework, and this decision framework needs to be robust and reliable and final. Yeah, it needs to be self-enforcing. And this is the same kind of consensus that blockchain has delivered, right? If Alice sends out 2 transactions, each spending the $100 that are in her account, it's very important that we form a consensus over which one of them goes through and which one of them doesn't. And it's all very well, setting up rules and setting up the mechanism in advance for doing that, but it's very important that when we do that, we enforce it. We have just absolute guaranteed enforcement of these rules. And the same is true for governance of chains. We can have discussions and we can vote, or we can use whatever futarchistic mechanism that we want to decide what upgrade should happen. But once it's decided, once those rules have run through, that process has happened, it's super important that it gets followed, that there is some underlying enforcement. As sure as there's an underlying enforcement of in Bitcoin that Alice can definitely only spend her $100 once. There needs to be underlying enforcement that whatever the decision was, properly following the criteria for making that upgrade decision, that it's followed. And this is why Polkadot's a meta protocol, because it's only with a meta protocol that you can really guarantee that these governance decisions actually get followed through, that they're not just a sort of, yeah, we kind of decided to do this thing in this direction, and then validators just kind of go along with it, or they don't go along with it, or some go along with it and some refuse to go. This is no good. So my personal feeling, I'm quite a strong proponent here of on-chain governance, not off-chain governance. And I believe that it shouldn't just be that decisions are made on-chain, but also decisions are enforced on-chain.